Welcome back to another Daishinfinity video. In this video, we're going to prove the so-called triangle inequality. We have different types of ways to prove this formula, but this is one of the most important inequalities that you are going to use if you are going to study mathematics or in general using some mathematics to prove some other stuff. So let's just dive right in. We have A and B's are in some numbers, so we call it K. It can be complex numbers, it can be real numbers, it can be integers, or whatever you want it to be. And it states that the absolute value of A plus B is always smaller or equal to the absolute value of A plus the absolute value of B. So I would like to prove this to you guys by just using equivalence rules that we can just put every single components squared. So if we square A plus B in absolute value, since A plus B in absolute value is always greater or equals to 0, we can already say that this is positive. And if this is positive, obviously this should be also greater or equal. This should also be equal to greater or equal to 0. So what we can do is we can just write this to be A plus B square, since A plus B absolute value is already positive. So we can just ignore the absolute value in the square. And this is just smaller or equal to the absolute value of A plus the absolute value of B squared. So what we can do right now is we can use the binomial theorem stating that A plus B squared is just A squared plus 2AB plus B squared, but just using the absolute values. So here, without the absolute values, we will have A squared plus 2AB plus B squared is smaller or equal to the absolute value of A squared plus 2 times the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B plus the absolute value of B squared. So what is the absolute value squared? Any number or any component squared is just the component squared. Since we know that the absolute value of something is greater or equal to 0, we can state that the absolute value squared is also greater or equal to 0. So it won't change the inequality at all. So since we know we can do this, we can just say it's A squared plus 2AB plus B squared is smaller or equal to A squared plus 2 absolute value of A absolute value of B plus B squared. And since we have this inequality, we can just subtract A squared and B squared on both sides, since we have the same thing on both sides. And finally, we would have 2AB is smaller or equal to 2 times the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B. Since 2 is not 0, we can divide by 2 and we will have AB is smaller or equal to the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B. Now we can use many different kind of arguments stating that obviously the definition of an absolute value is that the absolute value of A and B are always greater or equal to 0, only 0 if A and B are 0, or if A or B is 0. And for AB, we know that they don't have any absolute values, so they can be negative. If they are negative, numbers are always negative if we have a negative and a positive, or a positive and a negative. But we already know that negative absolute value of A times the absolute value of B is smaller or equal to AB, which is also smaller or equal to the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B. This statement is true since we know that AB is obviously smaller or equal to the absolute value of AB, and we don't have any inequality here, we just have the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B. So the proof for this one is in another video, please check that out. But we already know that this is true since the absolute value of AB is always bigger or equal to 0, so the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B is also bigger or equal to 0. but AB can be negative or AB can be positive. So since we have an or here, we can state that AB is indeed smaller or equal to the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B, which proves our formula that actually the triangle inequality is holding, that we can say that A plus B in absolute values is always smaller or equal to the absolute value of A plus the absolute value of B. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please type them in the comments and write some recommendations you want me to prove. And then we'll see us in the next Daishinfinity video. See ya.